Bet you weren't expecting that. What's going on, everyone? My name is SilencerCo and you are watching Sunday GUNDAY, the first new version of Sunday GUNDAY here on this new channel. So before we get started, I do have to give a big thank you to everyone who is here watching this new content on the new channel. As you know, I went through a lot of changes recently and I'm happy that there's quite a few of you over here from the main channel to support this second channel. I also need to give a big thank you to everyone who decided to help support this new venture over on Patreon. As you can imagine, reviewing guns and gear and shooting pretty much all the time, producing new videos every week gets pretty expensive, so I would not be making these videos without your support over there, so I really can't say thank you enough. Now for today's video, I figured that it would be pretty cool to go back and revisit a pretty unique gun that I took a quick look at in the past. If you've done any kind of searching for this gun in the past, chances are you have seen my old video that was on my main channel. I've now migrated it over here. But the one that we're looking at today does have some subtle improvements over the previous one that I took a look at. It's like the gun from Psycho Pass or RoboCop. You could probably dig a trench with it or row a boat, and people either love it or hate it. We are, of course, talking about the SilencerCo Maxim 9. The Maxim 9 is the world's first integrally suppressed 9mm pistol. Starting from the back of the gun, the whole grip, all of the controls, and sort of the half of a slide found on top is very HK VP9-esque, and I'm saying that in a good way. On top are tritium-filled night sights, a place to mount up a red dot optic in the middle, and the half-action slide has some nice deep serrations on it. The slide is really easy to remove, and underneath you can see that the internals are semi-modular, similar to guns like the SIG 320 or the ZEV OZ9. The flat-face trigger was my main complaint on the original version that I tested, and this one is improved slightly, which we will get into a lot more here in a second. Moving forward is where we get into the fun stuff. The entire oversized front end of this gun is obviously the suppressor, including 4 baffles, 2 of which are removable. It's all held together with these 2 long rods, and if you decide you want to run this in its shortest configuration possible, you can simply remove the 2 baffles in the middle and enjoy some hearing safe 147 grain ammo, but I would be careful with those supers. Underneath you'll find some key mod slots, and we'll talk about that, and the Maxim ships with 2 17-round Magpul Glock mags. Now there is still a lot to talk about with the Maxim 9, but first let's put some shots down on target to satisfy the needs of the people who just want to hear some steel ringing on a Sunday morning. Alright, we're going to start this test to see what has actually changed with the Maxim 9, starting with some super ammo. This is 115 grain 9mm Fiocchi. I'm shooting this thing in probably its loudest form today, and this thing is obviously going to perform a lot better once we get into some subsonic ammo. So let's see what a baseline is like with this thing. Not quite sure if this is going to be hearing safe, so I'm going to pop these on for now. Let's see what we got. I would say this is actually pretty close to hearing safe, but I'm gonna leave this on for now. Put some more into the mud. Still pretty quiet. Looks like we had a light primer strike there. That is not a good sign for the start of the test. We'll throw that back in. Maybe it was a bad primer. Alright guys, back for a first mag impression. It has been a while since I had put my hands on a Maxim 9, and the first thing that sort of changed from what I had thought about it in the past was that I remember this gun being very light, Maybe it was just because I assumed it was going to be really heavy since this thing looks so large. But when I got this new one and pulled it out of the box, I felt like the weight might have changed. I don't have the old one to compare it to, but it feels more like a real gun than the previous one did. I personally like guns that have a little bit of weight to them, and I feel like this one just feels pretty good overall. As far as the ergonomics and shootability goes, not a whole lot has changed there, so I won't spend that much time on here. But the ergonomics feel very similar to an HK VP9. I think they did a good job. Fits my hand really well. Unfortunately, if you don't like it, there are no replaceable back straps or anything, so you are just stuck with the gun in this configuration. But I think for a majority of people, this thing is going to end up feeling pretty good, like a full-size gun in your hand. The controls are great, the mag release is positive. I can get my thumb up here to release the slide really easily. That actually is ambidextrous as well, so for any left-handed shooters out there, you can reach up and drop that half slide. The serrations on this thing feel great. Like I mentioned, they are nice and deep, but they're not overly aggressive. They're not like super sharp. The texturing is pretty much the same. It feels good. I like how it runs up the side of the frame of the gun. The sights on here are a nice touch. I like that they are night sights and they are filled with tritium. However, I don't remember if the previous model that I tested was like that or not. The tritium vials are fairly small and they do work at night, but it's going to be very dark environments until you start noticing a benefit of having those on there. Having the cutout for an optic in the middle is also a nice touch. However, they charge you an extra like 35 bucks or something like that to get a plate to mount up whatever you want to run on here, whether it's an RMR or some other options. Now at the price point this gun is at, I think they should really include something like that, especially given the type of consumer who is buying guns like this. So I don't really appreciate how that is not included, but it is what it is. It did come in some nice packaging if you care about that. It did not come in a case, however. It did come with two 17-round PMags. On the underside of this gun here, they still have key mod. I guess since these guns went into production, they didn't do any crazy refinements to get rid of that. I think M-LOK would be a lot better choice, but that's just me. I know there are still people out there who like key mod and buy accessories for that stuff, but I personally am never going to use that. Even if you were going to mount a light up to that, you're not going to be able to get up there with your fingers, so it kind of makes it an awkward situation, and that's just something that I'm not going to use. Now typically I would save my thoughts on this part until the end, but we got to talk about the trigger because this is something that I feel has improved significantly. However, it's still not that great in my opinion. My original complaint about the first one that I had tested was the trigger, and that was right after they released, so it feels like they did improve them a little bit. The previous one was really plasticky and gritty, terrible break, it just was not that good. This one feels a little bit better in my opinion, however, I don't think it's quite up to par with some other guns out there. I'll bring you guys in here for a closer look at this trigger shoe. I'm definitely a big fan of the flat face trigger. The safety blade pushes out of the way nice and easily. And this gun is pretty much brand new, so there's still a little bit of grit to it. It's a pretty heavy trigger. I'll get that initial take up out of the way. And then right there is the brake. The reset on this. It's audible, it's not very tactile. You can't really feel that in your finger. And then again, I'm right on top of that wall for another brake. So maybe it was just the gun that I had tested in the past, or maybe they did actually improve something to these guns after their initial release, but this trigger feels much better than the previous one. The take-up, I can live with that. It's a little bit heavy, a little bit gritty, but it's also pretty predictable, so once I find that wall, I know the brake is coming right after this. There really isn't a whole lot of creep or anything, but the brake itself, it's workable. Again, it's not the best trigger out there. It doesn't really compare, in my opinion, to something like a CZ P10C. Those stock triggers are phenomenal in my opinion, but it's also not the worst trigger ever. The more I shoot this thing, I think the more it will break in, and hopefully it will be running even more to my liking once we're done shooting it here today. So with those initial thoughts out of the way, let's head back out here to the range, put some more rounds down, and then I will come back for some more final impressions. Alright guys, we got a lot of stuff going on here. I'm typically not wearing a belt like this, however, I got this holster mounted up and it looks pretty badass. If this gun wasn't RoboCop enough, I think running this thing in a drop leg holster sort of fits that bill. So this is my belt from Safe Life Defense, loaded up with a bunch of gear that I'll typically carry with me if I'm ever at a training event where I need to have a lot of mags or AR stuff, things like that. And my friends at QVO Tactical not only made that ridiculous appendix holster that you guys saw in that intro shot, but also this holster here, which I can mount to a Safari drop leg, as you see it right here. To me, this is really just a fun gun anyway, and we can talk about that more later, but I wanted to run it in this configuration because it looks pretty badass, let's be honest. Now, I'm not exactly sure what was going on with that Fiocchi ammo that I had, but now we're switching up to 147 grain. This should definitely be hearing safe in the longest configuration that I have this in right now, and hopefully this runs without a hiccup. We'll see how it does. About some dirt. Yeah, it's pretty quiet. About some draws with this thing, probably weird. Yeah, I'd say that's weird. About on target. There's a little bit of blowback coming from this thing, but that is sort of to be expected. I remember the original one that I tested had the same thing going on. And since this gun does take Glock mags, I might as well try out one of these bad boys. 33 rounds of 147. We had another light primer strike there. Not looking good. I'm gonna load that round right back into this magazine. Give it another shot. Seems to be running okay. That was a very, very light primer strike there, so it seems like it's not the ammo, but it's actually the striker on this thing. So my friends at QVO Tactical made me that holster to put on my drop leg setup. However, they also made this, which you guys saw in the intro, and this is too cool to not share. Look how much Kydex is used to make a more discreet holster for the Maxim 9. Everything is still the same, adjustable retention. Clicks in there really nicely with the pocket in the front of the baffle here. And these are not available to buy, nor will they be, because why would anyone want to appendix carry something like this? But we put this together really just for the intro and to show you guys how having a good holster will allow you to conceal stuff like this. This is going to make drawing super awkward, but it's kind of funny too. It's like holstering a whole 2x4 back into your pants. Alright guys, back for some of my final thoughts on the SilencerCo Maxim 9. I thought that this gun warranted a revisit in my opinion because it's been out for a while and there are some slight improvements like I mentioned with the trigger. Actually the finish on here seems a lot nicer and they are offering them in different colors now, like this gray version right here. As a whole, the gun is just really innovative, and whether it's good or not, I want to kind of showcase more stuff like this in hopes that innovation will continue in this industry. It has been a few years since this thing was released, and I still think it is one of the most innovative steps a company has taken in a long time, and I believe it kind of went underrated. Maybe not even underrated, but unappreciated. For the record, I did go out and purchase this gun for myself, so that might tell you something about my feelings towards the platform. Does it still have some hiccups? Yeah, of course. I mean, it is the first gun of its type, so the light primer strikes, kind of a bummer, but maybe after I shoot this thing some more, clean up the internals, maybe it will be reliable. Could you use this gun in a practical application? Probably, if you wanted to trust it, but I prefer things to be 100% reliable, and as I'm out here today, only put like 200 rounds down. It wasn't that reliable for me, so because of that, this will not be finding itself on my nightstand anytime soon. Now granted, it might be a one-off, maybe you have a Maxim 9 that runs great, but for me, this is more of a novelty range toy, and like I keep saying, it keeps pushing the innovation in this industry. Now yes, this is an NFA item and you will have to pay the tax stamp, but overall the price on these things have dropped significantly since my previous video on the Maxim 9, and you can actually find these around for around the $1,000 mark, sometimes even a little bit under that. Now, since we're talking about the price right away, I would like to quote a friend of mine who some of you may know as Coleon Noir. In a recent video, he said something that really clicked with me and my mindset about guns like this. He said that we as consumers complain about prices, but then wonder why there is no innovation in the gun industry. If we force companies to constantly slash their margins to satisfy our desires for the absolute cheapest gun possible, then that is what we're gonna get in quality. Then on top of that, there's no money left to put into R&D to get the innovation that we want. So the reason I'm even bringing this up is because I mentioned this mindset in my first look at this gun, and I still stand by it. I went out and bought this gun for myself because one, it's really impressive what they have here, and two, it's just damn cool. I want to support ideas like this and shoot them and test them and give feedback on what can be done. That way we can keep the innovation moving and keep more products like this popping up in the industry whenever possible. It's sort of like a crowd-funded Kickstarter type of deal in my eyes. I appreciate what SilencerCo has done here, and I want them to continue with their innovation, so I went and showed my support by now owning one of these for myself. I hope they keep pushing the envelope and start improving on things like this. They actually did release a non-NFA Maxim 9. Not sure how I feel about that because the gun as itself still has some issues and kinks to be worked out, but basically it's like this, but without the suppressor on the end. It's kind of a funky design, and this obviously is itself, but that's what we need to continue to get cool products like this out on the market. So that is all for now. I really just wanted to rehash some of my thoughts on the SilencerCo Maxim 9. It's a cool gun, and it's definitely going to be one of those range toys that I bring out every once in a while just because it's fun, it's cool, looks pretty badass, it's fun to shoot. Now, if you guys have any questions on this thing, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know what you guys want to see going forward for future videos, whether it's dedicated gun reviews or if you want to see more gear-oriented reviews, whether it's holsters and lights and things like that. Let me know what you want to see here on Sunday Gunday. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And that's all that I have for today. So thank you guys for watching. I will talk to you in the next one.